seems a little
Unlike
flipped
these
out.
phony ones we have around here.
Little flipped out.
Oh. Oh, let's not laugh in here. They'll send in the
SWAT team.
SWAT team. How dare we laugh and show no respect? These crooks. Provided in the document as required by state law. It was canceled. They're telling now why they canceled.
Is that why they put?
Yep, that's what they put.
No.
Go get it.
They put two, one for me, one for you.
Harassing citizens should be the first reason.
Oh, this is my my thing. Everybody reads the patch. Do you know the patch readership is up to like 54,000 people now? Yeah, it's pretty sad when the city's got to go to the patch and
take off my information.
Wayne just don't ask me. Can you email us that so we can respond in writing?
Oh. I tell you, I'm not going to put up with any more of this crap. Oh, they're giving their excuses. Yeah. Due to public disruption.
Oh. Presentation provided to city council, so
this is last.
I'll scan this and send it to the SEC.
Yeah, do it.
This is the story of my life. The SEC, wait to get it.
Oh, man. So what was that last thing she sent you?
I haven't even opened it yet.
No, you responded.
Oh, she said, no, the CFP special taxes aren't ready. And something about the county answer process. Is that a county answer
No,
process for you?
Well, it'll be funny when you get it,
But I got
the copy from the county before they get it from the city.
A sad kind of funny over.
I didn't even have to,
Good afternoon. How you doing?
How are you doing?
Good.
Is it hot enough for you?
Well, it's a little cooler, isn't it? I don't know. It gets cool, then it gets hot, then it gets cool, then it
okay,
gets
so
hot.
I brought my own Monday, August 6th. Oh, that's the city council meeting. Okay.
Waiting for fall, though. Definitely waiting for fall.
Oh.
Like the best ever garden this year.
Garden? Yeah.
Here's their draft internal
Just made
controls.
everything just,
explode.
Explode, yeah, a little water, a little heat.
I had blackberries, everything.
So that's what they included in, that's what they're saying,
Juicy.
that they did the internal control, right?
And I
Well,
can't
no, they're just
read
giving it
the
the
three sections, don't just come out. and-
Steve, how you doing?
They give, also,
good.
they give. No, that's okay, I believe you.
No, they give a,
Yeah,
No, I
just
sat through it. I sat
something to
through
get
it.
the,
I
to get the heat
remember it, but I
and
no,
just.
on this agenda.
plenty of water.
What?
On this agenda.
Here, you need some more cards? I've read it. Oh, handful. Oh, okay. But we went through that.
It feels so good to be off and be able to get your own behind. Not rushing it.
You mean they're gonna redo it? So you're gonna talk about that? Did anybody ever get a capital asset report? Huh? SWAT team yet? Have they come in yet?
We got
Oh.
stuff moving around this time, you don't have to fear for as long. We didn't kill us the first time.
Oh, the CFD.
Haven't even asked what for the final yet. This is the email she got from Alana Taylor telling Nicole, I didn't even school. I don't care what those people are charged. I don't do the records.
Someday they'll run out of excuses.
That was due a
won't
month
they?
ago. I haven't done that yet.
Hello. Still 5 minutes, 3 minutes. We do have a policeman over there.
Yep. She showed up. Personally, some salaries on there. He worked best he was. Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
Hi. Do you want this seat? Oh, no, this is fine. Want to have a seat?
Good.
How you doing?
Yeah, you-
How are you?
Good, how are you? Well, how to do that.
Hi, Nancy.
Yeah, this is just an extra thing that came up today. I have a couple things for you to sign after, just some certificates.
Oh, okay.
Really watching.
Yeah, that's what I have. You're counting.
Hey, how are you tonight?
Pretty good. I'm trying to see how many bodies we have to have for a quorum.
We have, Councilmember Santos said he was going to be a few minutes late, so
Okay.
he should be here any second.
That
Thank
should,
you.
that's what we need. It's a
And
sample, right?
then we're missing Steve.
Okay, now I saw his email that
All
he's
right.
not gonna be here. And Anna?
1, 2, 3, 4,
I'm here.
5,
Oh.
6. We got 6. We got plenty. If I included Ray, because I know he's on his way.
Yeah. Okay, we're a little late starting. Just had to get the appropriate number of people so that we have a quorum. Sometimes with the holidays and rescheduling stuff, it can become a little bit difficult for people to shuffle their schedules around and get us going. But we do have a quorum, and so let's go ahead and convene this meeting at 6:07 in the morning, or in the afternoon. And we'll go from there. Can we get a roll call?
Mayor Carroll,
Here?
Councilmember Santos,
Here.
Treasurer Sharon Geiser,
Yes, here.
Chair Steve Cooley,
Here.
Vice Chair Richard Beneke,
Here.
Member Stephen Martino is absent, Member Joanne Roberts,
Here.
Member Anna Olvera,
Here.
and alternate member Andrew Forrester is currently absent.
Okay, stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The agenda is published. Is there any changes that need to be made or anything brought forth from any of our members? Okay, and we'll go ahead and follow that. We need to approve of the minutes dated on August 6th.
We do have, Chair, the public comment period.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I got out of order. Okay, yeah, we do have names. Okay, we are going to open this up to the public comments. And again, let us reiterate, any one person may address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. If you wish to speak, fill out the public form if you've not already done so, and give it to the secretary. There's a 3-minute limit on public comments. There'll be no sharing or passing of time to another person. State law prohibits the committee from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments. We are asking that you be civil in your comments, and if you're upset, I can understand that that may be the case, but please hold those comments for outside this meeting so as not to create issues that have nothing to do with the meeting. At the time, we'll go to our list.
First speaker, Libby Yurmovic.
Livia Rumovic, State of California, born and raised 1961. Many of you here are not from the state of California. Mr. Cooley, you just got here 2 years ago, so you don't ever try to tell me what state law is. You are required to follow state and federal laws. Last month's meeting, you refused to produce documents that are on agenda as required by state law. And then you tried to put on some fraudulent scam about the capital assets in order to forge $400 million on the financial statements. It is the end of the year on June 30th. This is the September meeting. You should have end of the year reports, but you have none because no one's doing the books in this city. Last month, you canceled the meeting, but you didn't continue the meeting. So all of the things that were on that agenda were never addressed, and they're not on this month's agenda. We have state and federal laws for a reason. And I don't have problems with putting people in jail. That's really my goal. But don't you ever get in my face and tell me that you're smarter than me. Because if you had a brain in your head, you wouldn't forge government documents and commit fraud on camera. What all of you don't understand is that Copernicus used to turn off the camera so he wasn't recorded. And when the state forced him to keep the camera on, that's when it all went away. You're stupid. And no, I don't believe in sparing your feelings. Stupid is a clinical term. It means you're not intelligent, you lack knowledge, and you have no common sense. Forging government documents in the 21st century is a fool's game. It's all being recorded. All the money is transcribed. You can't forge $400 million on a federal audit. It's a federal crime. That's what the Beaumont Finance Department got an SEC cease and desist order. Stop forging documents.
Next speaker is Judy Bingham.
Judy Bingham, 115 Minnesota. I have been watching this city since 2004. Many of you, most of you, are newcomers. And believe me, you cannot imagine the horrors I have seen. I have also been watching this committee since its inception. In fact, Nancy Carroll kept me out of the very first meeting because Bill Alward didn't want the public there. And yeah, we're going to be here every meeting, whether you like it or not. But if Beaumont were serious about cleaning up the city's finances, they would have hired at least 3 CPAs. Why didn't they? I can only assume they planned some elaborate cover-up scheme. That's all I can imagine at this point. Sharon Geiser, why aren't you watching what's going on? You're the big yes man. That's all you do is say yes. We still don't have the capital asset report in spite of numerous requests. Mr. Cooley, do you have a copy yet? Not going to answer me? Or did you accept Mr. McDougal's story that we got to watch 2 times? Disgusting.
No other speakers.
Sit. Okay, we'll go back to our agenda and the items that are on our agenda. So the first thing we need to talk about is the adoption of the minutes. Anybody?
Move to approve.
Okay, do you have a second? Anybody opposed to that? Then we will approve the minutes.
I do have speakers on this item. Before we move on to the next, I have a request to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You want to withdraw my motion, or?
I'll just wait for the roll call if
Just
you
hold.
want.
I guess.
Libby Hromovic?
This is a copy.
It's a new item. The first item is the public comments.
This is last month's minutes and Don McDougal. Don McDougal proclaimed that he taught Gaspy and that he worked on Beaumont's audits. He's the one that forged the $400 million capital assets. Don McDougal is an LED light salesman. He is not an accountant. It is illegal to proclaim yourself a teacher of accounting courses when you are not even an accountant. And it is illegal to proclaim yourself the writer of financial statements when you had nothing to do with it. It was a fraud, an intentional lie. McDougal claimed he'd worked for many cities. I did public records request. Your responses are in there. Never heard of him. It was all a lie. I did a public records request. Your city manager stated that he hired McDougal, but there's no records of hiring him. I did a public records request for the writings back and forth, the communication from the city clerk's office. Who denied these records? City clerk says there's no written communication. She did public records requests without actually giving public records requests. That's how dirty this city is. It's a big deal that you forged that audit. But y'all never even saw the audit. You never approved it. But it's a really big deal that you perpetrated that fraud and tried to bring in that man. Who was in on it? We know Nancy Carroll was in on it. We know Cooley was in on it. We know Milana Taylor was in on it. She called him an expert in his field. His field was fraud. And we know that Vanessa Burke is in on it, who forged your audit.
No other speakers.
Is that all the speakers?
Yes.
All right. So we'll go back to the motion.
So I have a motion by Beneke and a second by Roberts, and I can do roll call if you're ready. Or, I'm sorry, you guys normally do a consensus with your...
Correct. Is there anyone who objects to approving the minutes? Okay, no objections, then the minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda is the internal control checklist.
Good evening, committee members. At our last meeting, we went through the letter of findings, internal control findings from the auditors for fiscal year ending June 30, 2017. And as we discussed, you wanted to see it as a checklist with items, explanations, so we'd have something to review through specifically, determine when those findings were completed or fulfilled the request of items needed in order to clear the finding. And then we needed to also discuss the priority of those. So I took the internal control letter from the auditors and just made it into a short checklist, 12 items, which is in a grid format. And then in the staff report, I have established what I believe is a priority list of how we can address them. The reason for some of them in the order that they're in, at the top of the list are the ones that are almost complete or are complete, just pending to have someone do the final sign-off through the audit. And then I went down the list from there in order to try and get as many things cleared off the list, off the top, as fast as we could. So I didn't know if you wanted to look at any of the individual items in more detail or if you wanted to have more explanation, but I'm open to any questions.
The grid makes perfect sense. You want to just run through those? There's only 12.
Mm-hmm. I can.
Let's just run through them.
The first 7 are the items that the auditors felt were of the most importance. Those are the material weaknesses. The first being the internal control over financial reporting. The bulk of the finding was related to making sure we had reconciliations done timely and that we'd done something in order to determine that every single important line item has been through a full reconciliation and sign-off process. So one of the actions that was taken that started in July of 2017 when I got a senior level accountant on my staff is we started the monthly checklist. And so she'd go through that checklist every month after month end to make sure that each one of those items were taken care of based on the time that was available and that we had things caught up. So that began in July of 2017 after the fiscal year-end audit. We also have a year-end checklist that we've developed that we're going to be using for this fiscal year-end, June 30, 2018. And we're looking to use that checklist during this month. This is the month of final reconciliations and accrual and documentation for the auditors. So we'll have the annual checklist completed this month as well. So the entire fiscal year of June 30, 2018, we will have all of those checklists and sign-offs in place for the auditors. The second item is the policies and procedures. We have citywide financial policies that were approved in September of 2016. We had finance department policies that I worked with this committee and with city council on that were approved on January 16th of 2018. And then in February of 2018, we had detailed CFD policies and procedures that were put in place after we had finished receiving all the information from the consultant that was looking into the internal controls of the CFD program. So we have these policies in place. We have a few more that I want to get in place and some that are in more detail to continue through, but all of these policies have been put in place already, which do cover the majority of the finding. However, based on the timing, they won't clear the findings for June 30, 2018. Because the policies weren't in place for the entire year, but we have taken the majority of action on that. The third item is a comprehensive fraud program and policy. We did put some money aside in the fiscal 18-19 budget for this particular project. I am in the process of gathering information about the kinds of fraud policies that are in existence. We're looking into the fraud hotlines. We're looking to see how much those kinds of programs cost. We're also looking into having maybe an interim internal audit function, but we have to determine some of the who do they report to, when do they report, how often, do they have any particular focus. There's a lot of different components. So once I have all that information gathered and we have something to talk about, I'll bring it to this committee to discuss before we take any steps going forward. The segregation of duties for cash receipts, the oversight for credits and voids, we've already created a policy for that, and that has already been put in place. What we didn't have was a full documentation that would make the auditors happy that we were doing it, so we've changed that a little bit, and now we have signed off forms. That's also not going to be cleared for fiscal 18 because those sign-off forms didn't exist all year long, but they do exist for all of what will be fiscal year 19. Segregation of duties for building permits. The software integration was begun with the building permits process in December 2017. So we have a fully integrated building permits program where permits can't be issued unless they have an invoice attached, and the invoice has to go through the cash receipting function, which then picks up the payments, so that there can't be any there's no way to issue the permit without going through that process. That wasn't in place all of fiscal 18, but it was for half of the year. So we will have that looked at by the auditors, but it also will not be cleared on our next letter. The development impact fees, starting in July of 2017, knowing that the softwares weren't integrated, we put together a monthly reconciliation process outside of the community development department, whereby we could reconcile all of the reports that they had put together against all the cash receipts that were coming in across the counter. We've been doing that every month. We've determined that they have been calculated correctly. When they're not, we make sure that the developer receives a bill for anything that's due, or that we issue a refund for anything that was overpaid. So we've had that process in place for the whole fiscal year, and we'll go through all of that with the auditors on their next visit for the internal controls in order to have that item cleared as well. The segregation of duties for business licenses. The software solution that we had was supposed to integrate the business solution of business licenses with all of the other functions we were integrating. What we've discovered is what they told us isn't exactly how it works. So what we're trying to figure out is there a better solution and how best to approach it? The way that their software works is not in any way in the manner in which the city of Beaumont processes business licenses. It's completely different, and it would change the entire structure of how we do business licenses in the city. So we're looking to see what options we have, what can we do. I mean, we have a software in place now, and we are learning how to run reports in order to do some reconciliations between the two programs, try and find a way to come up with a way to reconcile the two and at least have some step in between to satisfy part of this finding. But long term, we need to find a better software solution. The transient occupancy tax and utility users tax, we do have a checklist of all of the entities that submit those funds to us monthly and or quarterly, depending on which one they fall under. We have been checking off to ensure that we've received all the reports during the periods that they are due for. We have also already notified all of our transient occupancy tax payers that if they don't submit timely, that we will begin sending them penalties and they will have to pay the late fees. That will begin this year. Their first filings are going to be due in October for the July, August, September quarter. So we'll be taking up something with that here in the next 6 weeks. We do only have 4 filers with that, so that's not a tremendous struggle on our part. But the utility users tax is a much, much longer list and hard to verify how those funds come through. And we're working to see if there's a way we can double check some of those from some other outside third party. I'm not sure that that's possible yet. The oversight for the fuel credit card activity, we took that into consideration last year right away. We've already gotten the reports that come through the vendor. They're properly segregated as we'd hoped that they would be when we got it all straightened out. The function of issuing cards is only by 3 individuals, 2 being directors and 1 being staff person, so that we have control over how new cards are issued and how cards get canceled. It only goes through the finance department or the administration department. The individual departments no longer have that access. Also with the vendor reports, we have mileage that reports with the VINs as well as the dollar amounts of gasoline. So we can see based on mileage changes if the gasoline that was charged is reasonable for the vehicle that was used. Those also go to the directors each month so they can review it so they know what their own staff have been doing in the different departments. The overhead cost allocation, we have a partial policy for that we've been working on, and we don't have everything complete because every time we think we're just about there, we change some of the structure in order to try and get some efficiencies within the city, and it messes up our calculations. So we're still working on that, but we should have that shortly in the next month or 2, and then we'll be able to bring it back to this committee to review, and then we can get that put in place. Segregation of duties at the police department, that's just getting a written policy actually done for the after-hours collection of receipts at that department and then doing follow-up to make sure that it's being followed. We had done that verbally, but we need to formalize that. And the segregation of duties for the bus passes that are sold. The transit department has put together the policy and how they've segregated the ticket books and all of the stickers and those things, and they just need to find a way to follow up in order to determine that they've accounted for all their ticket books. And that's something that I've asked them to do because they're the ones issuing the ticket books to start with. It would be hard for finance to jump into the middle of it and then try to verify those counts. So we're working with them to get that item taken care of. And those are the 12 items from the auditors.
Okay. The business licensing is being investigated and you're working on that. Do you have a guesstimate of when that should be either identified as to needing to do something else?
We have to have a solution before the end of December.
Okay.
Because otherwise we're stuck again for another 8 months during the business license issuance cycle again. So I've been working with our IT manager and with another member of my staff who's familiar with not just how the business license system that we currently have works, but she also knows some of the problems that we have with it. So we're trying to figure out the best way. We've done a few demonstrations of other softwares, and then I have a list of cities that I'll be contacting in the next week or 2 to find out what they've done. I have a list of cities that use both the software we're using now and also the software that we were supposed to be using, just to see what they've done and how they've been able to make it work, to see how best we can proceed. And then our IT manager is looking at the way to make it work, whichever way, with our website and also for the reporting that we'll need, as well as just making sure that it functions properly and we have a way to utilize the information integrated with the general ledger.
And then a question about utility users tax.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure what that is. And how many users are we talking about, ballpark idea? Is this everybody in the city?
Oh, no, it's not individuals. This has to do with businesses that have utility workings in the city. So it's maybe 50.
Okay.
And it's not large dollar amounts
So the
either.
dollar amount is not material.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then most of these, I assume, December, end of December is your goal to have them
Oh, yes.
taken care of. And the bulk of the ones, it looks like to me that are on here, while every dollar is important and tracking every dollar is important, but these are not materially significant, are they?
No, the ones that are materially significant, we tried to get some kind of controls on those right away. So those we took care of, like the developer impact fees. Those are large and they're huge and they
Right.
have a lot of different implications. So we immediately had to
Right.
put something in place to control that.
So just to reiterate, everything that's materially significant is resolved, and we have a few things hanging on that are important, but they're not materially significant, don't make substantial, but they're being taken care of just the same.
Right.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions?
On the policies and procedures, that was a auditor's initial request or did that come from the state? I can't remember. Was it the state that said?
It may have been everyone, because there should always be a set of policies and
Yeah,
procedures.
It should always be. We never really kind of had anything.
Right, but the citywide ones were the ones that were developed first, and
Right.
those got put in place right away, and then we started working on some of the
Yeah, I know
others.
as a finance committee, we worked diligently trying to produce these and get these out and up and running. And now, when the auditors come in and audit for the various fiscal years, do they make any kind of comments on the type of policy? I mean, do they make any kind of recommendations? Do they give us any kind of suggestions that these look pretty good, or I'm just wondering because, you know, we put these together. We have a lot of expertise that was brought to bear on putting it all together. But like anything else, policies and procedures, they need to be checked periodically to make sure that they're doing the job they're intended to do.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if the auditors do that kind of, do they do that kind of check? Or-
They will. They haven't really been able to get into the details specific yet because of the timing of there being so much missing. So as we get forward into these different timeframes where we can say, okay, we've cleared that one, they can spend a little more time looking at, okay, how does it work? Does it work well enough? Do I have suggestions? You know, maybe they need a more specific policy for this function, but they haven't been able to get narrowed down into that kind of gap yet. They're still looking at kind of the broader approach until we clear some of these up. But they will be, yes, giving us some suggestions.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions, but I'll start with that particular comment and that question. It's my understanding too, and you can clarify this, that the auditors can only go so far with recommendations on policy, because if they make recommendations and you put them in place, then basically they're auditing their own recommendations.
Right. They
So
can't
can
tell
only
us
take it
what
so
to
far
do.
and say things like, you might want to tighten this up or whatever, but they can't really give their specific expertise, because then they're auditing their own advice.
Understood.
And so there's a line that they have to draw on that. So, but I do have some other questions. So,
Yeah, and just one last comment. Basically, auditors, when they're doing the types of audits that we've requested, they're looking to see if there are policies and procedures in place, but they will always disclaim any test or knowledge of the efficacy of those policies and procedures. To do that would be an entirely different type of audit, and I've not seen one done very often because they're huge and would require years of records after the policies and procedures are put in place. And we're just trying to get up and running, so
Right.
it wouldn't even make sense.
But they would definitely tell me if we have a hole in the process.
Yes.
That's all I
So,
was asking, if they do that. So we can address it, and we can put something
yes,
to fix that one.
yes, which is why there's some things that, yes, I would like to address as we go forward with this
Right.
committee, some of the more specifics. We hit all the big groupings, but there's a lot of more significant small issues that fall underneath those that really, they need to be addressed as well. And we try to write them as we go, but we need to formalize some of them.
And so, of course, we'll continue to look at those.
When I look at the checklist, I'd like to see more columns, more detail on it, a little bit more structure, for instance. And I realize that this is nice and simple because it's one page and nice and neat and everything, and so I want to complicate it. It's too simple for me.
Okay.
So you could do the type, you could just do a code on the type, like an M or an S or an O, let's
Right.
say.
And I
give
started to do that, and then I thought,
give yourself a little more space there. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to begin with the end in mind
Okay.
in this comment. If I look at something, I'm going to pick on one. If I look at the comprehensive fraud program and policy, the end in mind, if you remember by the auditors, they wanted to be able to go up to any employee and say, if you see fraud in this institution, what is it that you would do? What's your path? How would you fix it? Who would you go to, et cetera? And so that's the end. If everybody that they had surveyed, let's say, said, I know exactly what to do. I need to do this, I need to do this, and I'm going to be anonymous and I can report anything I find. So I'd like to, with these items, begin with the end in mind, begin with the auditor's perspective of how we know that we have completed it. Because really that's all that's going to matter on this level. So I'd like to see these same items, but then I'd like to see a column that says, whatever it is that's the acid test where we know that it has been completed from the auditor's perspective.
okay,
Because otherwise we're kind of being general and that's all that it comes down to.
Right.
So that's one thought.
okay.
The prioritization methodology, I get that some of these, or a number of them, have already been completed now. So I would like to see a column that says completion date or anticipated completion date. Because then that would tell me that at the end of October 2018, that something supposedly is going to be checked off. And then that would tell me that the fraud program at the level that the auditors expect this to be a good program might not be able to be completed for another 10 months or something, whatever it is.
Okay,
But I'd like to see that column too.
okay,
And I'm just getting warmed up, sorry. I want to see a column that has some sort of a sign-off, because I want to be able to get it signed off by the committee, so I want to be able to have a sign-off that, yes, we all agree everything in here has been done and we're 100%. You can put that next to completion if you want.
Okay.
I considered having a column for a percentage of done, because some of these are a little general, like the policies and procedures and the updating and whatever. I'm okay if you don't want to put that in. But I kind of look at these to see what percentage that we're at. So if you tell me that the date is December 2018, and I can see that I'm only 65% done, I'm going to worry
right,
more than I would in another analysis. And so now I'll get to this prioritization methodology.
Okay.
It's good to put the ones up front or up at the top that you know are going to be able to be sort of wrapped up and put off of there quickly. And, but I don't know if we should put any other prioritization in here. I guess it's good to know why. And you can explain it to us, but if it's on the sheet somewhere, why you've prioritized it a certain way, then because everything that we do is a public document,
Sure.
and then it's on the sheet, what our prioritization methodology was, so that not everybody's going to get the benefit of a lot of explanation up here. So, so those are my thoughts on that. And just a thought on the transient occupancy tax. Is the Board of Equalization, do they keep track of that? They
No,
don't?
no.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out some cross-agency that you can do that with so that it's not too entrenched for you.
I don't know of one.
I know, I know. The other thing is too, even if they report, we really don't audit them, so we really don't know how
Right.
accurate the reporting is.
This is
Right, and how much more revenue could that possibly generate?
Yeah,
And would it
I
be
know.
more than the cost it would take to have someone go and do those
So
audits?
minimal too.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, it's not that many.
Right.
If we were La Quinta or something and we were getting tons of money from the hotels, I
Right.
guess that would be much more meaningful.
Right,
So,
if we had a resort area here, then absolutely we would look
Okay.
at that differently, but we don't.
that tax, is it based upon revenue from room rentals?
Yes,
Okay, and so I assume somewhere they're reporting that revenue,
it,
but it's probably only on an income tax return.
or it goes to their corporate headquarters because
Right.
they're franchise owned,
Right.
so. It's, but we only have 4.
Yeah.
so those are just my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, on this particular,
Yes.
the mayor's suggestions?
Oh, no, no, no.
Okay,
you might
so,
have his
so to the mayor's suggestions, anybody have any further comments? I'm looking particularly if I'm thinking those are items we'd like to see, and I'm thinking that we probably want to request that officially be made a request and a date set to have that report done in that manner. Anybody have any comments on that?
Oh, the only comments I have is just on that one and there, on the action item taken. It should be side by side on the completion date. And then whoever, signing off. I mean, initial would be great. I mean, so we know who's signing off.
Right.
That would
Okay.
be good on that section.
So,
on
would it
that
be
column.
appropriate at this point in time for somebody to make a motion that we request that be done?
Chair, I do have a request to speak on this item before you make a motion.
So we can't really take action till that.
Are you ready for that?
Great.
Yes, okay. Libby?
The first page of this is out of your sewer bond that the city is trying to get. State Controller's investigation, blah, 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 May 15th, the State Controller started their thing. The last line says, the city believes it is now in compliance with all 79 internal control elements which were identified in the SCO's report. That's what you call fraud, an intentional lie. The Beaumont Financing Authority got a cease and desist order from the SEC. Stop forging government documents in order to defraud banking institutions. The city's solution to that was to form another JPA, the Beaumont Parking Authority. The other pages are from the State Controller's investigative report. They gave a list of actions the city was required to take. The second page is A3, the Audit Committee. Does the city have an audit committee appropriate for its size? I guess so. Are the members of the committee independent from city management? No, not at all. In collusion, we found that out last month. Do audit committee members have sufficient knowledge, experience, and time to serve? Negative. Does the audit committee regularly meet to set policies and objectives? You talk, but you never do anything. Do the members regularly receive the information they need to monitor management's objectives and strategies? Does the audit committee review the scope and activities of the internal and external auditors? You see, it is not the auditors that are supposed to be doing the recommendations and giving direction. It is actually you, Cooley. You didn't even know that.
No other speakers.
Okay. Let's see.
Oh, so I will make a motion that we bring back to the next Finance and Audit Committee meeting an update on the checklist with the addition of the suggested columns and data that the committee agreed to, including Councilmember Santos's comments and consideration of Vice Chair Beneke's comments and the chair's comments.
Second.
Anybody opposed to that? Okay, motion passes.
Okay, future agenda items, right?
Future agenda items. Oh, wait a minute, you still had a comment.
Yeah, I still,
Yeah, sorry about that.
well, Alana, can I ask you pick one in here on the checklist? It's so important on my side, on the accounting side.
Sure.
On your 004, on the cash receipts.
Yes.
And it answered 90% of my, my questions when you explain every line by line. On that, I really appreciate that. But I know in our policy procedures that we created on that. From the beginning, we created a, who's authorized to check every cash receipts we have in there, the voided and the bank reconciliation and everything, right?
Right.
And now, it says in here restructure on our side. Is it an additional person who will be lining up and audit that, and then a C is coming out really up to the end of the line? I mean, that's the thing on the accounting side I like to see.
The cash receipt side, the finance department still gets the reports from each one of the cashiers, their daily report. We put it in the system. We do the reconciliation and make sure it matches. We also get over in the batch reports of voids and write-offs. So if somebody adjusts an account for a nickel, they've had the power and the ability to do that. And if it's more than $20, then generally we look at the report and the backup and make sure that it was reasonable to do so. The problem was we were doing that too far after the fact. So what we've done is in City Hall, there's a person who is designated now with the authority to approve any voids that any of the cashiers do, any adjustments or write-offs that the cashiers do. That is outside of the finance function. It's somebody who has that daily right there on the site that can give them those approvals right then. So we've reorganized a little bit so that we have someone with that oversight who is there and available to the counter staff at any time.
Let me interrupt you. That person is totally separated on that function.
Yes,
And
but
then,
we'll still get the final reports, and then we still have to make sure that it was signed off by
And then,
everyone.
the other person who will authorize that finally will be on your side, right?
At the very last
Very
approval.
last. Okay.
But it will be after it's already been done, which
Yes.
is what the auditors, they were just saying, you shouldn't be looking at it even the next day, which usually it's the next week. But they're saying, no, somebody needs to look at it right then. So
That's correct.
that's
my
where
next
we've,
question on that. On the
so
same
we've
day.
added an interim step for another person who will physically sign off on those.
Okay. And then you get the report on that on a daily basis, right?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Are we going to check future agenda items?
Yeah. Yeah, do we have any future agenda items?
Yeah, I would like to have a general overview For the Finance Committee on our Risk Management Department.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, we do have a risk management department, I guess, or we do self-insure for claims and liabilities and everything. And I notice in our budgets from 14 to 15, 15 to 16, 16 to 17, it's been going up, the claims and the payouts. I'm just wondering, I'd like to have an overview of how we handle that. I know we're covered for, well, we have like a third party. I'd just like to know the workings of it, okay? There's different ways to risk manage a city, and we're doing it a certain way, but I don't understand how we're doing it, okay? I'd like to understand.
I'm
Is
not,
that part of the finance and audit?
yeah, I'm not sure that
I can explain.
we have any,
Okay, so can I?
Sure.
All right. I don't think that, I think we could probably do a staff report, which just would summarize how we approach risk management for the city, and then what we've had to pay out, what we've
I'm not
increased.
necessarily
Is that what
concerned
you
about
want?
the claims paying out. Specific
wanted-
claims, not worried about that.
Okay.
I'm just worried about, we do have a liability there. We do self-insure for $1 million. And our payouts, our claim payments have been a little bit over $1 million the last couple of years. So I'm just wanting to know how it works.
Okay.
Just an
all right.
overview, kind of.
Let's
how
put
it
that
works.
to a staff report. Now, I
I
can do that at any month. It doesn't have to be next month,
That's true.
right?
That's true.
Okay,
No,
and the only reason I say that is because I wanted the committee to consider a couple of things for next month, so the committee can evaluate when they want to hear some of the things and when they want to put them out, right?
okay.
We're going to have a budget workshop at the end of this month, and so I would think that the Finance Committee would like to probably get a little update on the results of the budget workshop, and maybe a summary from
Sure.
Milana on the results of the budget workshop. So that was one of the things I was going to suggest, and I say that because that's in a timeline that we have to pay attention
Right.
to right now. The other thing is, is next month the month for your financial reports?
Yes.
I thought so. So we're going to have the financial reports on the agenda. And those were two things that I wanted to bring up. You're going to meet with the auditors in October, so probably after our meeting, though, so you won't have an update on that. But do you see what I mean? So I'd like to see on the next agenda if we could do for the information for the Finance and Audit Committee, at least a little input back on how the budget workshop went, and of course the financial reports. So then if there's time to do the staff report on the risk, also we could just add that to that.
Okay. I'd say it's not an emergency. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I know.
Just,
Matter of understanding.
I'd like to understand
Yeah.
how we handle it. There may be ways, I know from my future experience, past experience, there could be ways we might be able to save the city some money. That's all.
Okay,
And I
so,
do think it would be good at some point, and probably October or November, actually, November would be okay too, is to do a summary of the bond for the wastewater treatment plant, so that the information's provided back to the committee on where we're at in that. So, and depending on where we are in that timeline, we could, and how filled it is, Milana, for what we've already given you, you could probably do October or early November for that, right?
okay, so what we have, that we're talking about for future agenda items, I want to make sure I've got them all, is report back on the budget meetings. The monthly reports are coming up next month, and the meeting with the auditor, which couldn't occur before, couldn't come back to us until November in all probability, correct? Because it won't happen until after our October meeting. and then the summary on the the wastewater treatment plant. Okay, so timeframes on these or which months to look at them. I'm thinking that probably the staff report on the risk management moved to November.
I'd be fine.
It seems like a ways away, but it seems like we've got the other stuff pretty much in where it needs to be. And November, report back on your meeting with the auditor. Okay.
Chair, I do have a request to speak on this item.
Okay.
History of risk management in Beaumont. James Gregg was the risk manager. James Gregg was also the original principal of General Government Management Services before he transferred it over to Copernicus. And then James Gregg was the principal of ERMAC, the city's self-insurance. So James Gregg was the risk manager, pulling $250,000 a year. He sold the city ERMAC at double what he sold other cities, and he was running GGMS out of City Hall. 3 monies. He resigned after the raids, June 30th, 2015, and then he had the nerve to try to sign up for a CalPERS pension, which I stopped. And then he tried to sue the city for $1.5 million, saying that the city should have protected him from me. Lessons learned, and tell all your friends. No government welfare, no pension for fraud and embezzlement, for criminal activity. James Gregg's a lawyer, but he's been pushed out of the bond market pending his settlement. He now writes wills for little old ladies. That's all he can do. You have no risk management. It's still on the budget. After James Gregg was pushed out, Pinckney, City Attorney Pinckney, started funneling his money on the general ledger through the risk management department. That's your risk management.
Let me clarify. None of that has anything to do with today. It's, he was gone a long time ago.
Past history.
It was not a honorable time in the city of Beaumont that those things were going on. The city has denied him through a vote for him to get any pension benefits.
It was a claim.
So there's
I didn't bring this up.
there's facts, and this is not even.
I didn't bring this
worth
up to
our
open up a
time
can of worms. I
at
just
this point.
brought this up.
No, you're not.
At one time, there wasn't a highway running through the city.
That's
It has
true.
nothing
That's
to do
true.
with today.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up in this meeting? Okay, it appears that, well, it doesn't appear, all of our items have been covered. And so we will adjourn this meeting at 6:58 p.m.
Thank you.